It was a cold morning when Edward stood outside the door to the lumber room, the one place in his aunt's house that he was never allowed to enter. He had always wondered what was behind that door, ever since he was a child, when his curiosity was as limitless as the world seemed. The house was large, with creaking wooden floors and rooms filled with heavy drapes and antique furniture. But the lumber room was different. It was a place of mystery, and to young Edward, mystery was irresistible. His aunt, who was a strict and no-nonsense woman, had always warned him to stay away from it. "That room is for adults, Edward," she would say, her voice stern, her eyes sharp. "You wouldn't understand what's in there." As Edward grew older, the fascination only deepened. He had spent countless hours imagining what might be behind that door. Perhaps it was filled with old treasures, or maybe it was a place where things were hidden, things his aunt didn't want him to see. He had tried everything to sneak a glimpse, listening at the door, peeking through the keyhole, and even trying to cajole his aunt into telling him more. But she never gave in. Now, at the age of 13, Edward was determined. His aunt had gone out for the day, leaving him alone in the house. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, he knew the opportunity had arrived. He quickly made his way to the lumber room, his heart racing with excitement and a bit of fear. The door was old, with chipped paint and a rusted lock. Edward had seen the lock many times, but he had never tried to open it. Today, however, was different. He knelt down, his fingers brushing over the cold metal of the lock. He tried to twist it, but it wouldn't budge. For a moment, he considered giving up. After all, what was the point? His aunt had always made it clear that it wasn't his place to open that door. But then a thought struck him. Perhaps there was more to this room than he had ever imagined. Perhaps his aunt was hiding something important. That thought, that irresistible pull, made him press on. Edward searched the house for a key, but found nothing. Desperate, he resorted to the next best thing, a simple crowbar he had seen in the tool shed. It was an old tool, rusty and worn, but it would do. He grabbed it and hurried back to the door, his excitement growing with every step. The door was sturdy, but with a few sharp jabs of the crowbar, the lock finally gave way. The sound of metal scraping against wood echoed in the stillness of the house, and Edward's heart skipped a beat. He had done it. He had unlocked the door. With trembling hands, he pushed it open. The room beyond was dark, the light filtering through a small window high on the wall. Dust hung in the air, and the smell of old wood and forgotten things filled his nostrils. The room was cluttered with piles of old furniture, crates, and stacks of books. It wasn't what he had imagined. There were no treasures, no hidden secrets, just forgotten things, abandoned in the shadows. Still, Edward stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. The walls were lined with shelves, filled with jars and boxes, most of them covered in thick layers of dust. The floor creaked beneath his feet as he moved deeper into the room, his curiosity pulling him forward. He ran his fingers along the edge of a wooden table, its surface worn smooth from years of use. As he moved further into the room, something caught his eye, an old, leather-bound book sitting on top of a pile of crates. The book looked out of place, its edges worn, the cover faded with age. He picked it up, brushing off the dust, and opened it. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were still legible. It was a journal, filled with handwritten entries, the ink scrawled in a hurried, almost frantic manner. Edward began reading, his fingers tracing the words as they unfolded before him. The entries spoke of strange happenings, disappearances, voices in the night, things that could not be explained. As he read, a chill ran down his spine. The journal seemed to describe things that he couldn't quite understand, things that made his heart race. There was mention of hidden rooms, of secret doors, and of people who had come and gone without explanation. The deeper he read, the more unsettled he became. The final entry was dated only a few years ago, but it seemed to speak of something that had happened much longer ago. The last words were simple, yet chilling. They know about the room, they know about the secret, and now they are coming for it. Suddenly, a noise from behind him snapped Edward out of his trance. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, the room seemed to blur, the shadows seeming to grow deeper, darker. He couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone anymore. The door to the lumber room creaked. Edward froze, the book slipping from his hands and falling to the floor with a soft thud. He heard footsteps, light and deliberate, coming closer. His breath caught in his throat, and his mind raced. Had someone followed him? Had his aunt returned? Before he could react, the door swung open, and a figure stepped inside. It was his aunt, but she didn't look like the woman he knew. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and frantic. "Edward," she said, her voice trembling. "What have you done? What have you found?" Her words were filled with a desperation that sent a shiver through him. "Aunt, what's going on? What is this place?" Edward asked, his voice barely a whisper. His aunt shook her head, her hands trembling. "You shouldn't have opened that door. You shouldn't have come here. It was never meant for you. You don't understand." But Edward interrupted her, his fear growing. "What are you hiding? What's in this room?" Her eyes flickered toward the piles of old crates, the forgotten things scattered around the room. She took a deep breath and stepped closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. "It's not just a room, it's a warning. A place that holds what we cannot control, what we should never have known." Edward looked at her, confused. "What do you mean? What's in the room?" His aunt's eyes darted toward the book on the floor. She grabbed it quickly and slammed it shut, her hands shaking as she held it tightly to her chest. "This is what's been passed down for generations," she said. "It's not just a journal, it's a record of something that should remain buried. You've seen too much. It's too late now." As she spoke, the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows darker. Edward's mind raced. He wanted to understand, to know more, but the fear in his aunt's eyes told him that some things were best left alone. He had opened a door that could not be closed, a door that had led him to something beyond his understanding. "I didn't mean to," Edward whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't know." His aunt stepped back, her eyes filled with sorrow. "It doesn't matter now. We have to leave this place. We must forget it." But as they turned to leave, the air in the room shifted. A low, almost imperceptible hum filled the space, and Edward felt the ground beneath him tremble. He looked back over his shoulder at the lumber room, the door now standing wide open, as if inviting him to return. But his aunt grabbed his arm and pulled him away, her grip tight with fear. "No, Edward, we cannot go back. Not ever." The door slammed shut behind them with a finality that echoed through the house, and as they stepped away, Edward couldn't help but feel the weight of the room, its secrets, its dangers, pressing down on him. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. "You said the silver lining right,"